back to Libib's booktube channel. My name is Kaylin and I am super excited to talk about my most anticipated video that I love to film every single year, and that is my best, and this year I'm combining it with my worst books that I read in 2019. And this is definitely one of my favorite videos to do because I get to reflect on all the great and wonderful reads that I've read the past year and the not so good books. So with that being said, today we are going to kick it off and we are going to start off with the top 6 best books of 2019, and then later on in the video we'll move to the 4 worst books that I read this year. So coming in at number 6 we have Cove by Katie O'Neill, and this book dives into saving the oceans, and I loved and enjoyed this book because the spine is beautiful, the cover is beautiful, the pages inside are beautiful, and the illustrations are just magnificent as I fly through them. But this book is absolutely cute, adorable, and wholesome. It has a great message, especially for younger readers, and I just loved and enjoyed this author so much. So I highly recommend this book, coming in at number 6. Next up, coming in at number 5 is Love and Misadventures by Libib. This was actually a very surprising read. So how I discovered this book, as I've probably mentioned in every single video now, that a Barnes & Noble bookseller recommended me this book. I was very skeptical when I first saw the cover. I was like, this looks kind of like maybe not up my forte, but I think the second or third poem in this book really enticed me to, like, you know what, I'll give this book a try. And then I gave it a try, I fell in love with it, and I have so many Libib books now in my TBR pile, and I move them all the way up. Screw all these books behind me. It's just a wonderful poetry book. I think this has become one of my new favorite poetry books. Better than Amanda Lovelace, so sorry all you out there, but I love the love and the happiness that I feel from reading this poetry. It just makes me stop and think, and I just want to cry, I just want to get emotional, and I loved this book so much. So if you're looking for some amazing poetry, Libib is definitely one of my new favorites. Next up is a book that I loved the villain in, and this is why they are number 4 on my list, and that is Magnus Chase, The Gods of Asgard, Book 1, The Sword of Summer by Rick Riordan. This book has been on my TBR for a very long time. I bought this when I lived out in Montana, which was several years ago, and I just never picked it up until like one day I was like, I need to pick it up. This has been on my TBR forever. It's just sitting on my shelf. Would I like a Rick Riordan book again? I don't know. So going into this book, I was very hesitant because I liked and enjoyed Percy Jackson when I read it, and then the Heroes of Olympus I just wasn't that big of a fan of. So going into this, I was definitely super hesitant, like I said, but I loved this book. I read this book, I also listened to parts of it on audio and followed along, and I just thought the audiobook and the book were great. Our main character, Magnus Chase, is just kind of homeless, running around Boston. One day, Magnus is being tracked down by someone. His mother warned him to not hang around, and everything just kind of topples downhill in a downward spiral, just like the Percy Jackson books. You gotta save the world in so many days, and so they go on these adventures to try to save the world, and I just loved the villain so much. The villain is the best part of this book, I think. I've read this storyline so many times throughout other Rick Riordan books that I'm just kind of over it at this point, but having that villain just be amazing revigorated my love, and I was like, I need to read the next book now. Like, the ending of this book was just like, I need to read the rest now. Coming in at number 3 on the list, I was surprised this book made the list, honestly. I didn't know how this would go down, especially being like super hyped up by the publicist when I was at ALA. I didn't know if I was gonna like this book, but then I loved it, and that was House of Salt and Sorrows by Erin A. Craig, and this is a 12 Dancing Princesses story retelling. I don't know anything about that story or any retellings, so going into this book I was super hecka blinded. And we have this one girl and her sisters just keep disappearing randomly throughout the book, whether it be at the ball or where, but they just keep disappearing and dying. And so like she's trying to figure out where her sisters are going, where are they dying? And our main character, Annalie, thinks that these deaths are not accidents, like they are being plotted because these daughters just keep getting picked off one by one by one. So my favorite part of this book was getting to the end. The beginning and middle parts, I was like, am I really enjoying this? I really don't. Like, I should just like force myself to finish it. And it actually became one of my like favorite books of the year. The ending is just so chaotic. There's so much going on. You're like, what is happening? I don't know. And you're just, it's just this one huge like explosion, and that's why I really loved and enjoyed this book. Coming in at number 2, I'm gonna start gushing and blushing again, but that is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. This book is so good and so wholesome. If you want to check out more of my thoughts, feels, and opinions, I will leave my Read With Me Pumpkinheads video in the description box down below. But this is definitely one of my like all-time favorite reads in the graphic novel verse because it's just so cute. The colors are so wonderful. They talk about awesome food. It takes place in the fall season on a pumpkin patch where our 2 best friends are working together in their last season. And it's so good and so wholesome and so wonderful, and it just makes me so happy, and I can't wait to reread it again this fall and go to pumpkin patches and go to apple orchards and eat all the fall food and have all the fall scented candles. Like, this book is definitely cute and adorable, and I think everyone should read it. And last but not least, I have my favorite book that I read in 2019. And honestly, I was not expecting to have this be number 1. I definitely think Pumpkinheads was like number 1. But this book had to take the cake once I really thought about it. And it is a graphic novel, and that is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is insane. So yeah, I didn't know this was a graphic novel, and it's 5 horror stories in graphic novel format, and they are definitely fucking terrifying. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. This book is amazing. I loved all the thrill of the short stories. I don't think there was any one in particular that was super bad, which was great because reading anthologies or short stories or collections, there's always like some stories that you're like, nah, I don't want to read this or I don't want to deal with this, but this book was absolutely amazing and spooky and horrific. And I remember sitting in my hotel room when I took my bookish vacation, and I was just like, what do I do now? Like, where do I go from here? This is terrifying. Of course, I'm a chicken and I don't watch scary movies, but I do read scary books, so I don't know how that combination happened, but this book, hands down, my favorite book of 2019. That's crazy. It's crazy. It's definitely crazy. I can't believe we made it. And this is my favorite book of the year. So this is exciting. Okay, done gushing about that now. Okay, and so now it's time to move on my least favorite books, which is probably gonna be the shortest part of this video because I did not like these books at all whatsoever. Yeah. So coming in at number 4, which I really hoped that this book was on my best of 2019, but obviously it is not and has made it to this list instead, and I could not force myself to put it up higher on the list. So like my least favorite book read this year, The Haunted by Daniel Vega, which this book is just full of hot messery. The more I think about it, and the more I reflect on it, the more like my star rating goes down, which really upsets me, and I get confuzzled and compuzzled, and just there are just so many emotions going when I think about this book, when I rethink about it. But our main character moves into a house and it's haunted and her parents are trying to fix it up, kind of like the one season that I watched on American Horror Story. I feel like I've only seen one season, and I feel like that relates to this, if I'm not mistaken. But they try to fix up this house. The house is haunted. Things are happening. Spookiness ensues. Spookiness is not that even spooky. Definitely The Merciless is way more messed up than this book. And towards the ending, like the last 50 pages is one giant what the actual fuck is going on here. There are so many different things that are happening. Honestly, The Haunted was not that haunting, and I'm sad that this made the list. I wish it didn't. I love Daniel Vega, but like this book just did not do it. Now that we moved on, the next book is Pete the Cat, Five Little Pumpkins. I did not like this book. It was a horrible children's book. Like, I definitely have read way better this year, and this had no message. This had 5 little pumpkins. This pumpkin did this pumpkin did that. Where the heck was Pete the Cat? Like, he was nowhere to be found, so he made the list. Coming out at number 2 is Lumberjanes Volume 3, and honestly, I thought Lumberjanes was all right. Not the greatest, definitely not the best, but there came a point where I was like, am I going to continue on with this series? So by the 3rd volume, I finished it and I was like, what the heck? Like, why am I even reading this at this point? Ended up picking up volume 4, which was definitely a little bit better, but that volume was a hot mess express. There were so many different things going on. Nothing made sense. There was this plot element, that plot element, and And last but not least, coming in at number 1, the worst book that I read this year was actually The Spiderwick Chronicles by Holly Black, and I could not stand this book. I remember like trying so hard to get like all the books read during the reading rush, and this was a short, quick book that I could just fly through, and I found the audiobook on Libby, so I just like plugged in the headphones, followed along, but I could not follow along. I wanted to sleep, I wanted to throw the book out the window, I wanted to throw it somewhere that I was not able to read or look or hear or anything with it. I just did not like it. I don't like fairies. I don't like all this fantastical stuff. I mean, maybe if I was like 10, I would enjoy this book, but being 23 at the time, I did not like this book at all. And it was definitely one of the worst books that I read this year. Just did not like it. Plain, simple. Do not recommend. Sorry, not sorry if you're a fan. But anyways, that is going to be the best and the worst books of 2019. Let me know in the comment section down below what were your best and worst of this past year. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this week's bookish video, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next Thursday for a new bookish video.